All the way from the start, I could feel it in my heart, like all the way from the start.
In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to get your 808 to stand out and make it translatable on systems, hi-fi systems like laptops, cell phones that may not have the bass response that your monitors or your car stereos have. So there's a misconception out there that sometimes the reason why you can't hear certain 808s as much or they're not as noticeable is because they're not as loud in the mix. So naturally, people just turn the 808 up really, really loud and think that that's going to be heard on everything. The reality and the science behind it, or the mixing science, we'll say, is an 808 typically is hitting, below 120 hertz down in this lower range. So speakers that can play that back, no problem. Now, these smaller systems, most of them can't play back anything below, 150, some of them even 200. So it physically can't replicate the sound of the 808 if you're in that really low end. The only thing that's going to play back is some of this really low mid. And then if you have any high frequency information in the specific 808 sound, of course, that's going to be heard. So this being the case, what we want to do is we want to separate the low end from any low mid and the high end of our 808 track. So I'm going to duplicate our 808 channel here, and I'm going to drag it down, and then let's call this 808 low, and this is going to be 808 high. And it's okay to have the side chain on both of these. That's okay. It's going to route it there. You don't necessarily have to sidechain the high end once we get that done, but let me show you how to do this first. So first thing we need to do is get rid of all the high frequency information on the 808 low. So we're going to go down here and just make sure and take note of where you make this cut. We're going to start rolling off everything below, let's say 150. And we can just take another one here and make sure that we're cutting a lot of that stuff out. Okay, so now let's just take a listen. So you can hear by doing that, we didn't fundamentally change anything about the sound there. We're just taking out some of this stuff that we're going to be processing on this 808 high. So taking note that we made that cut at 138, we can actually just copy this. Let's just copy this over and then we'll paste it to this. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do the opposite. So we're going to roll this one off at 138. And I'm just doing this so I can get a better visual here. Okay, great. So now, perfect. So that's at 138. So let's hear what is there. It's not much. So now we have the 808 low and the 808 high separated. And once we've done that, we're going to heavily affect this frequency and emphasize it so that these these hi-fi systems without lower frequency capability, we're going to make this more audible. So let's go ahead and let's put a distortion on this. We're going to do, let's just use a stock Logic distortion. You could also bit crush it, which gives you an interesting effect, but we might do that one on the next beat. Let's try distortion. And let's just heavily drive this thing. Pretty cool, right? So the last thing that we want to do is I want to widen this so that our stereo or our headphone users are going to get even more of an emphasis on this particular low mid frequency for our 808. So let's try and use a widening plugin from Matthew Lane. It's called Stereo Delta. You all should check this out. It is a cool one. So we basically just made this high end of our 808 3D. So if we take that stuff off and width. Now for the fun stuff. Let's mix these back in together. So I'm going to bring this down and then we're going to make some adjustments here. It's up to you how much you want to drive it. It's personal taste. Obviously, you're hearing a lot of really aggressive distortion and drive on the 808s these days, which is fine. For this beat, I just want to kind of tuck it in. But again, it's just going to give us that emphasis we need for the 808 on hi-fi systems. Now, one thing you do want to take into account when you are shifting some of the EQs and processing your 808 or any instrument in this way is to make sure that we don't have any kind of phase issues. So the easiest way to do that is just to switch your mix into mono. So you can use any kind of mono plugin. Right now, I'm just going to switch it on Ozone. And let's just double check and make sure that everything is sounding okay. And if you hear something disappear, for instance, if you heard the 808 high go away completely, then we've got a little bit of a phase issue. But let's play it back. I don't think that's the case. Nope, so everything is okay. But again, just general practice when you are spreading things out and processing things in this way, it's always good to check mono compatibility.